Okay. Welcome everybody. We're here at the appreciation of NC State Technology Training Solutions, which is one of our sponsors, the nonprofit group that Greg and I offer training at. We do a social selling for LinkedIn, many other courses, and a course I do with Karen Titi on social media management. So just special thanks. Notice the little posters on the back wall, and over to you, Greg.
Yeah, well, so we figured today we jump on the beta bandwagon and try Blab for recording. We're recording episode 71 with Julio from rfactr, who is one of these significant social selling influencers out there in the field. He's got some wonderful stories to share as I try to suppress my northeastern accent. But we have a great show. We got Brian McFarland is also joining us today on Blab. So if you haven't checked out Blab, definitely go out to blab.im. It's a great way to have some fun conversations. We were trying it out last night and ended up into this podcast technology discussion with one of our friends here locally, Mike Phillips, and that was really good. But today, let's talk about social selling, and again, thank you to NC State for at least providing us some space to do this in and some fantastic bandwidth. So, so Julio, thank you very much. Thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure, and I think to echo what Brian was saying earlier, it's not easy to get a bunch of heads together in a room and really share best practices, talk about what's working, talk about what hasn't. And when you don't do that, it slows the progress of the industry as a whole. It slows the curve from zero to hero,
Very true. I agree. I think as I'm seeing more and more social selling folks who are kind of entering the discussion, you have a lot of quote unquote analysts or experts out there. They're starting to kind of push themselves off in their own little corners and forming cliques and all that stuff. And Martin and I, we're really not cliquey kind of guys,
We want to play with others.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I think that sharing social selling experiences is very important. When Martin and I got together back in 2009 and started doing this, we saw an opportunity for salespeople to start using social for better engagements, to learn their prospects better, to hopefully open the door to a better relationship and eventually a better sale. And since then, it's still, there's a lot of salespeople they're not getting it. So we're here for them. And we want to help them out as much as possible. That comes from providing this podcast to doing the blogs that we write, doing videos. We do some paid things with training, as well as we're going to be launching socialselling.training pretty soon, which will be an online site for folks to come out to. And we'll have a number of different membership options, but we're going to put some free courses up there too for things where we feel are very significant fundamental things that a salesperson should know about using social. They should just know it, and if they want to take it to the next level, then they can. So
for those of those, there's a question there in the sidebar. People are asking for a definition of what social selling is. Maybe each of you should maybe tell people what it's about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Martin, why don't you go ahead and start with yours?
Well, to me, it has many of the characteristics of relationship selling, built on an expanded sales cycle instead of a sales funnel, that works with using technology to understand the customer, has more knowledge and is doing more research than ever before. So we're building rapport on the web and on the ground with them on their sales journey. And it takes the old world of the funnel and converts it more into either an hourglass or a cycle that goes on. And so we're aware of the fact that what's going on with technology and on the ground, and it's more educational based. So that's a long answer, but that's just one, to me, I frequently will keep answering the question, as I work with it. And Greg, yeah. go ahead and let you give them more of our formal.
Yes.
And then,
so I'll give it.
Go ahead.
I'm going to be real short with this because I want to get Julio in on this as well.
Yeah.
Basically, so we define it up on our on the website at linkingintosales.com. And social selling is a strategy sales professionals use to discover prospects, engage buyers, and develop business relationships using social media. We really want to keep it very, very simple. Anybody who listens to the opening of our podcast when it goes out on iTunes and Stitcher and Player FM and TuneIn, then we also have a very nice voiceover work who is somebody who's going into a little bit more in depth of what social selling is, which is using content as well to help enable a buyer to make a purchase. And there's a number of things that go into it, but real simply, it's a salesperson using social, because prior to that, prior to 2008, they really weren't using social at all. But today they're using social to develop those relationships and find exactly who they need to be talking to. So, Julio, I'll hand it over to you.
That's a great definition, Greg, by the way. I love that. And just to sort of add on to that, and actually I sort of preface this first, I hope in 3 to 4 years, it doesn't exist. We don't have to call it social selling, and it just becomes selling. And you know what? The reality is we're not there yet. And we're still understanding that the modern buyer has changed substantially. The way they do their research, the way they come into the sales process now armed with so much information. And it's changed what a salesperson has to do to be able to earn that time and earn their interest from the buyers. So I think what is social selling to me? It's layering social media or using social media channels on top of your pre-existing sales process, with the key being, using social media efficiently and productively to drive pipeline revenue and opportunity.
Very good. Perfect. Which I think kind of relates very well to what rfactr does, but we'll get into that just a little bit later.
Brian, do we want Brian to give a definition, Kevin? I mean, Greg.
Yeah,
right.
no, absolutely. Yeah. Brian, go ahead and tell us what you think social selling is.
I really think that it's about sharing your knowledge, your networks, and your compassion for helping like-minded individuals succeed on the web. And if you're just pushing that type of mantra, I think that's when people will, there's a lot of information available right now that 60 to 70% of people already have made up their mind about what they want to buy, but they just need a little bit of extra guidance and education before they finally make that commitment. And I think social selling does a fantastic job of just educating the buyer to a point when they're ready to engage with you. And I think getting people moving towards a very progressive call to action that gets them offline fairly later on. But obviously it's a longer sales cycle. And I think this is where social selling is having a little difficulty catching on, because the traditional salespeople and sales forces haven't adopted very well to social media, and they don't understand it, and they need a lot of education to get their sales team to be effective with social selling. And I think that's a challenge that's facing everybody right now in that sphere.
I agree. I think one of the major things that I've seen with some organizations is that the adoption, or the sales management adopting it and understanding how to measure it. And there are some solutions out there that can help with measuring the effectiveness of social selling, but it has to be integrated into the systems that are already in place that they have. How do they track it through the CRM, for example? It has to come from management has to want to adopt it. I think salespeople, once they're shown how exciting the social selling can actually be and how much more fun it does make the sales process, I think salespeople are quickly adopt it. But it is management who has been in a very traditional role in sales sometimes that they get stuck a little bit, and they're not too sure about learning something totally new and how to measure the effectiveness of that. So that way, then when they're reporting up, into the C-suite, those numbers, can they prove the effectiveness of social selling?
Yeah, no, great point. And when you think about it, sales organizations or sales teams, that's the lifeline, the blood of an organization that keeps revenue coming in. So it's natural that they're going to be quite resistant to change and not adopt techniques that might not be proven by the mainstream market yet, which is part of it. And then I think what you mentioned, Greg, and I think to echo everybody's sentiment, is how, as a sales leader, am I attributing revenue to that activity? And if I can't do that, why the heck am I going to give, my time to even consider something like this? Because it has to be trackable, and I have to have a way to understand what's happening on A, how that's resulting B at the end.
And the importance of training, of course, with this too,
Of
which
course.
is Kevin's bringing up in the chat there. Yep.
I'll open up my seat for other people to come in and ask questions.
All right.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's have you stay in touch. Good to have you.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian. And good point. I mean, by, of course, someone we all know quite well, Jill Rowley, I mean, education as well, right? It's not something that comes later or is optional or is something that you should maybe think about at some point. And again, to quote something that Jill would say, is a tool, as a fool with a tool is still a fool, right? And the training has to be there. A military sniper with not proper training, you hand that gun off to somebody over on the side, what are they going to do with it, right? And it's the same concept. Training, tools, I mean, people, process, platforms, that's a mixture of all three, and they all have to be present for any sentiment of success to exist.
Yeah, exactly. The other question too is whether or not sales teams actually have time to take away from doing their current sales process and then go do training. I'm working with a client right now where their sales team, they're very, very used to doing very transactional type sales, and the product that they're selling, they're just not well versed in it. They don't understand that actually the product that they're selling is a solution sale. It is something that they can generate, tons of recurring revenue over time because of the amount of service that they have to provide. So they need to come back. Sales teams need to come back and get retrained. And using social selling can help them, especially when speaking at different levels of the organization. So, like, how do you discuss a topic, this particular topic with the C-suite? How do you discuss it with, someone in middle management or with a specialist? That's all critical. And I think you can figure that out with social selling because the tools are out there. It's just a matter of sitting down and figuring out what's going to work, testing it, measuring it, tracking your results, and delivering those and make sure that they align with your business goals.
And I'm eager to dig in a little bit. How do you pronounce it? rfactr, is that right?
That is right. rfactr,
Okay,
and our core product is called SocialPort.
I'm really eager to hear more about it. And of course, I love to know the history of how it evolved too and came into existence. That always makes it a little more meaningful for me. And the vision of what you see it as going, where you see it as going.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when I joined rfactr, and what made me see the opportunity here is I think, what China's doing today, right, there's so much growth happening that they're building full ghost cities, infrastructure that's there for when growth happens so that it's ready for that, so that they're not reactionary, right? Why I loved what I heard before joining rfactr was the fact that they've built an infrastructure in place that nobody else is even close to, right? They've thought so far beyond, right? When people were building tools like social media dashboards that were measuring likes, retweets, very fluffy marketing metrics, the folks at rfactr were going to work, right, very heavily on creating a tool that actually focused on revenue. How do we take this social media activity that everybody's working on, and how do we actually trace it back to who's doing what, to attributing revenue? And talking to sales leaders and looking at some of this stuff, like, it blows their mind because they've never had a tool that's able to capture social activity and attribute it to revenue and track it back on the CRM in the back end in such a robust way. So there's finally a way now for social media to prove its worth in the sales process. So that was what excited me. And to take it back a little bit, really interesting story. I mean, and I asked about what the story is and where we're going before I joined. And the CEO, Richard Grasser, who's a fantastic person, he really laid it out, and it's a great approach. Where we started from, we were a B2B sales training company, right? Going out there, training folks on how to use LinkedIn, how to leverage Twitter, how to put context to content, and how your salespeople can leverage that to increase trust, value, thought leadership, and ultimately revenue. after doing the training, and this is going back to 2011, 2012, everyone came back and said, hey, we love what you did. We understand this is important, but we have no tool. We looked on the market. There's no app or tool in the marketplace that can take these best practices for salespeople that you're telling us to do and actually operationalize it with technology and make it an easy process for someone who might not even have a social account, all the way up to somebody who might be an advanced social seller. So essentially, we've put together a platform at that time to empower social media usage for salespeople in a specific and efficient manner with relation to sales. So everything about the tool is built for a salesperson. It allows them to publish out to social channels. It allows them to identify prospects, nurture them with content. And essentially, it's a way for marketing to take optimized marketing content and drop it into a repository for salespeople to share with 1 or 2 clicks and start getting action and amplification on social messages, which ultimately leads to revenue growth, opportunity growth, and pipeline growth.
Yeah, I actually last week I got I had Julio and Kevin give me a walkthrough. Well, mostly Julio. Kevin was there for support, but they gave me a demonstration of what rfactr does. And I tell you what, any B2B organization that is looking into social selling, they should definitely consider taking a look at this, because to have one of the biggest problems that sales has is finding content to share. And because they don't have time to aggregate it. So who should be aggregating this for them? Well, marketing, of course. And marketing should want to do this because they can now measure those activities, not specific of the salesperson, just of the effectiveness of that content that they're sharing out there. So marketing can go back and fine tune it and say, okay, well, this is really working well. This is engaging the audience well. We need to find more content kind of along this line and continue to put it out there. So I really think that you guys have a very, very good solution that addresses a very important need within B2B sales organizations. So
thank you. And that's the goal. That's the goal, because we're all trying to figure out a way to do it right. And we just mentioned, what are the best practices, right? We were talking about that at the beginning of the show. No, they're not there yet. We were still finding them out, and nobody's sharing them. And part of the thing that we wanted to build into rfactr Social Port to make sure that it helped people along that process was a way for others to see what's working for the other folks in their organization, so that they could see, oh, people are tagging in posts, or, oh, that type of content is it's resonating with our audience. I can do that. So I think making sure there's a mechanism, if you're going to put a social selling program in, to share the best practices that are working and operationalize them is a part of that program that needs to take place.
Right. So, and I had mentioned before that being able to take and track where your leads are coming from, and being able to take and measure the effectiveness of that social selling of that program is a problem that sales management has. They don't know what metrics or how to properly track it. And one of the areas that you showed me in the application was that if a lead was to come in from social, it updates that field inside Salesforce. So that integration is there. So that way sales management and the C-suite can actually go in and create the dashboards that they need to understand how effective is the sales team being with this content, and how effective are they being with rfactr, or with any other tool that they're using for social selling to bring in those leads.
Yeah, I mean, it's so essential. I mean, if you're going to activate people on social, especially at any sort of scale, it's probably a good idea to measure how it's going, what's working, right? And we get that, right? But that's it. How can you know what has been your most effective lead source? Is it events? Has it been what type of marketing content? Has it been just LinkedIn? Who knows, right? So now there's a way to measure, and that's what we wanted to focus on, is what did cause that lead to create itself, or what was the attribution to that. And now that we can do that, teams can say, wow, we literally grew our pipeline 35% as a result of social media last quarter. Huh.
Yep.
It's exciting.
Before we get to some of the questions, one of the questions my personal interest is the development of soft AI using analysis in different products, and it's just a very. I want to ask you about how is that being applied. Then we'll jump over. I see some questions in the feed, and we'll attempt to capture some of those. So would you just kind of address that with the product?
And sorry, do you want to just elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, we're seeing more and more advanced, I guess I would say, beginning artificial intelligence and helping to identify things and help priorities in different products. And it's something that interests me is how are they using large data? How are they using small data to analyze it? And obviously some of this is proprietary, so you couldn't reveal it, but in a general sense, is there anything you're using or applying of what we call the AI field in the product?
Yeah, I think we're always looking at things that can help us predict and use predictive data in any way possible. So part of what we're trying to do on our back end through analytics is identify really the content that's resonating and find out what are buyers interested in right now. Right? Like, for example, if we're looking at data being shared online in the sales space, I mean, right now it's meeting your 2016 number. That's the content. That's what's trending with a lot of the sales leaders, because we know we're preparing for sales kickoffs. They're getting ready to make that plan for the next year. We know that, and our system can tell us that, and we're able to take that information and make sure that we're sharing those topics to make sure that we're top of mind, we're adding as much value as possible, and trying to somehow figure out a way to make sure that our content is a step up from the noise, from the rest of the content that's being created. And I think it was from the beginning of time to 2006, that content gets recreated online every 48 hours. So how are we standing above? And what you mentioned is we need that data. We need the predictive analytics to tell us what people want to read about and what they need right now. And it has to be real time. Otherwise, we're just creating noise and we're in the mix with everybody else.
Excellent. That's what I wanted to know. Greg, you want to go over and look at some of the questions? Maybe we'll grab one. We have a number that have come in, and loved in the Blab giving us the ability to get some questions. Yeah, so you might have scroll up to get some. Go ahead.
Yeah. So look at we got Get Social Health, and I have a feeling I know exactly who that is. I guess we kind of talked about this yesterday. It's Janet Kennedy, I believe, if I'm correct me. She mentioned that, or she asked, about the generational gap that happens in sales cultures, and we have, maybe you have millennials who are coming in, and then you have boomers who are, not quite out yet, but and then the a little bit of the generation in between, Gen X and others that with regards to just their differences in the sales approach. Now, from personal experience, I've seen millennials who are coming right into into a sales organization, and they think they know social, and they really do not know social. They're
well, in this way, where you're speaking in terms of intentionally helping the customer along the sales journey, and also thinking in terms of liability risk and other things. That's not what you think of. I don't want to do something dumb on Facebook that won't get me a job, but now the dimensions get a little bigger.
Mm-hmm,
True.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
what do you
absolutely.
think?
Well, every time it kind of makes me laugh a little bit, because I think back to some of the, SMBs that I talked to, going back a couple of years, and, my aunt's nephew is doing it, or, I'm having somebody from high school run my entire social media account. They know Facebook, right? Yeah, we have digital millennials coming in here, and they do know social media, but not in a business sense, not in the slightest. They know how to use social media to share pictures, to talk about how many pepperonis may have been on the pizza. But how to use it in a sales-oriented process to actually move the needle along, that's a whole new ballgame. And even they require their own training. So each case, whether you're an old dog or a new dog, there's that change, refreezing, and that has to take place, and new behaviors need to be learned for both groups.
And I want to give the example being, 56 years old of the mistakes in my generation is they're thinking of the old interruption advertising. How many people can I interrupt in hope that someone will respond? And then, I even something as simple as I met this person looking at a car and I said, you could build some networks online, and I got them on the online space, and it was a stream of advertisements they put up. And then I said, and reviewing would build relationships, and the first reviews were complaints of places. So I realized I failed in educating, so we have challenges along the way. And also to mention, get social health is we aren't just talking about multicultural issues here. We're talking about multi-medium issues, that some are working more at a text level, some want to be on the phone, some won't trust you unless they see eye to eye. So we really are adding more dimensions to the sales of understanding that persona of our customer and what are the different worlds they want to talk on, and the sequence of trust that occurs. So anything you want to add to that?
I think that's an excellent point. And to be honest with you, I was literally sitting down 2 days ago and said, okay, trust is the major thing that we're looking to accelerate here. And how do we do that? And the formula that I came up with in my head was credibility plus consistency plus value. And that's how you can build trust on social media. You have to be credible, meaning you have to show that you have some expertise in the topic. Otherwise, as a buyer, why would I want to deal with you? You have to be consistent. That means what you're representing on one network, you have to represent on another. And what you're putting out there on LinkedIn about being an expert or publishing articles, they should be able to find that on other social networks or SlideShare or YouTube or other areas. So maintaining consistency. And then value. Value is the biggest part of that equation. If you can add value to a prospect, then you're going to accelerate the speed to trust as well as the level of trust. And that can come through sharing good content. And it also can come by just being very, very prepared and being on the phone and having that initial conversation that works out. But proactively building value and credibility by being active where your buyers are, what LinkedIn groups are they in, what Twitter hashtags are they in. And if you can be there and share good content, you can accelerate that trust. And I think what you mentioned is exactly right. Social media has now given us an avenue to build trust at a much quicker rate than it's ever existed before.
I agree. I mean,
prior. Greg, go ahead.
Yeah,
see if we have another question too after you mentioned.
Yeah, definitely. So, and I've had several previous lives, and I had worked in almost 10 years in retail, and it was a really good experience. But it was retail sales, and no one gives anybody any credit for retail sales. But if you could figure out how to handle somebody within for multiple people in 15-minute interactions on a pretty simple transactional basis, then I think you can step into the roles of a salesperson who is carrying a bag and selling millions of dollars, has $1 million worth of quota. And then the next life was doing basically that, where for a period of time I had a sales territory that I sold mobile tracking equipment to truckers. So it's and I had a lot of fun doing it. But one of the things I took away from both of those experiences and combine it is that it does require the relationship development aspect of sales, which has always been there, which is going back to the beginning of what we were saying before, is that maybe one day we'll just stop calling it social selling and it'll just be selling. It'll be, an everyday practice. And, we still have a long ways to go before we can drop the term social at a selling, because we still have to have a lot of salespeople that need a lot of training. So, but still, I think that there's a lot of stuff that's in the past or in traditional sales that does come over to social selling in particular. It's just, I think what social selling does is it accelerates the process a good deal. And especially since it's more of a response to the buyer's behavior changing. So now they're doing more online research. They're hitting up Google, they're looking to their friends on the social networks, whether it's on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, and they're looking for people to hopefully help them solve a problem. And we've talked. We had Eric Quanstrom from. He was with Pipeliner. He's not there any longer. I can't recall where he's at right now.
Desk now.
Which one? Kite Test. That's right. And he had when we had him on the show last year, he had mentioned that the opportunity for salespeople to get into the buying process earlier. There's the corporate executive board had put out that stat where 60% of the buying process is done by the time a prospect calls a salesperson. Well, salesperson should have looked at that and said, well, how do I get them at 20%? What do I do to help them go that 40% to get to the point where they are ready to buy and have that discussion with me. And if sales, I think that's the great thing about social selling is that they can help navigate that buying process.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely. I think that's the disconnect right now, right? I mean, if we're going to leave the 75% wide open and just take a chance that when they come to us, their decision's going to be shaped in the optimal way for us, that's tough odds, right? But if we're sharing content proactively to affect that first 75%, and we're understanding, when a decision or a buyer wants to come to a decision or understands there's a problem, the first instinct is to go to Google, right? And if you're not going to show up and shape the way that they're going to find what the information looks like or shape their perception of what the problem and solution is going to be, then you've already lost and you're at a disadvantage.
Exactly. I mean, let me get back to that in 1 second, but let me get to, as you get social health, had another question about, some salespeople talk smack to a prospect. Social is about relationships. Does it mean that someone is monitoring their conversations? Is that the leading micromanaging? Is that leading to micromanaging in 140 characters? Well, we've heard horror stories.
Yeah, it can. And I think that's a good way there's a balance here and a good way to going over it, but not micromanaging so that you kill the authenticity and connection that occurs. And I think that is a risk that happens. And, sometimes the answer I'd give to a salesperson is it's time to upgrade your resume because you're not going to win that battle, in the worst case. Over to you.
Yeah, I think absolutely. There's so much that can go wrong and so much that can go good on social, and that's why all of us exist today on this podcast, because we're there and we can offer the insight to help people to make sure that mishaps don't go the wrong way. And I think there's such an opportunity for people to make big errors on social, and that's part of why it's been hesitant to move at such a quick speed of adoption. But we're practicing. We've been trialing this out for years now. We can help. And I think, Greg, that's the message I get chatting with you too, is, you have those methods, best practices. People are doing it and finding a right way to go about communicating on social and doing it the right way for the sales organization.
Another thing is the importance of having workable policies and guidelines that aren't so crippling. And Google did a lot to make their own boilerplate more understandable. So you go, this is the playground. I can play on this field and I need to watch out for that field. Is very important to have usability and guidelines that are workable for them. And this is something even we bring up in our social media management class. Guidelines, get guidelines. Don't make them so crippling they can't speak, but give them worlds, because you've got multi-generations, you've got people from different cultures and people from different levels of support in their family growing up of what would be appropriate. And I think that's probably an important piece.
Mm-hmm.
So Jill got a comment down there. It says, easy guideline to follow, use common sense.
Actually, I want to really address that, Jill, because, what I've learned in working with people in many different cultures is, sadly, we have some people that are very bright, very capable, very effective, but common sense is relative in the world. And I got it was meant in kind of humor, but this is an important thing to not step over, especially now that we're getting different generations. My generation generally was given more formal training in it, but sometimes a more relaxed environment is appropriate now. And so I think that's very important not to step over. So go ahead. Over to either of you. Greg?
Go ahead, Julia.
I think,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the basic rule is like, hey, would you say this to your mom? You know, if you could say that to your mom, you're okay to put it on social. And that's what I used to say. Now things have gotten a little bit more complex in that regard. And I think having a policy in place, like, it's essential. And I think having a phased approach, right? I mean, being somebody who's worked with huge, diverse sales teams, the idea has been to always make sure that you don't just jump right into the water and you do things properly, right? Sometimes it's, why don't we start with, here's a message, put it out, don't change it, just share the message, let's get used to this. And when they start to develop a skill in one area, then it's, okay, well, now how do you put context to that message? How do you make it better for your audience and lead them through that process versus just throwing them in and taking a chance? And I think if it's done right and the right steps and measures are put in place, that can be avoided.
Yeah, I don't think I would tell Eminem to just say whatever he'd say to his mother, though. I just want to add that.
Yeah, that's right.
In my business, policies are still a good source. I won't belabor it anymore, but I meet a lot of people, and I go, "Wow, you really were raised in the woods."
Yeah, but just to add on, I mean, the example I always give is like, everybody's seen or read The Great Gatsby at some point or know what it is, right? Social media is a cocktail party. That's it. That's all it is everyone in a big room, and you got to find out which part of the room that you want to be in. Where do you want to interact? Where's the most important players? And when you have a chance to get there, are you going to say something stupid, or what are you going to say? So having that in mind, it's a cocktail party, it's a civilized conversation. How can you add value in every interaction that you have? And if you do that, follow the guidelines, it's going to be successful.
Excellent. Good advice.
So we had a question about the from Get Social Health about whether or not we've been following the LinkedIn harassment case or charge that has been made in the UK from last week. I think I saw some of this in my Google alerts. And if I remember correctly, it's related to a female and her picture on LinkedIn. And I think this it's very unfortunate that that sometimes this happens where you have an attractive woman who has a very nice, well done picture that's up there on LinkedIn, and they just get messages. We have a co-host from who's going to be joining us on a regular basis, Elise. She has this issue as well. She gets creepy email messages from dudes on LinkedIn, and it's not appropriate. Plain and simple. It's simply not appropriate. And matter of fact, we'll be happy to show you how to block them for free.
And report them. I'm big on it.
Yeah.
I will report somebody that I think is creepy on LinkedIn as soon as possible, and of course, checking if their photo is fake using Chrome and the right-click search on Google. Yep.
Or using TinEye as a plugin. Absolutely. Yep. Those stock photos, man, we picked them up so many times. Kevin says that it's not just women. Oh, I haven't been harassed by a woman yet, so probably a good thing too.
Yeah, but you said you were going to rate it on a 1 to 10 scale, Greg. I think now they're going, what's the point on that? I won't offend you.
It looks like Kevin's got some issues in his inbox.
Well, we all can't be as beautiful as you, Kevin. That's the thing. So. Very cool. Glamorous. Excellent. Yeah, good point. So we have other questions on it. We've got, Mike, a bunch of people. Now, I have to say, this is my first using live with Blab. I love the feed and mention that's the interaction available to it as well. So really nice tool. But, this is another tool for creating content. This is going to produce a video, and then it's going to produce an audio stream, and we're going to be able to check that out for using on our podcast. So again, to me, one of it is part of the social selling is testing out and using new tools to find out, be ready when the customer comes along, or have good counsel from people going, hey, it's in development. You don't need to use it yet. I'll get back to you, and keeping up with these.
But I hope we keep on using this because this is fun. I love all the questions. Now, hopefully, it translates well into context on the podcast too. But we'll just have to take and make sure that people come out and look at the video, because we'll embed that video in the post as well, because we'll put this up on YouTube, because it's always good having folks like Julio and everyone else come up to the podcast and join us for a great discussion about social selling. So anything you think that that's important, or any trending things that you're seeing on your end as far as with relation to what you're doing over at rfactr?
Yeah, I mean, things are changing all the time, right? Social space is moving so quickly, and now it's time. I mean, I thought this would have happened a little bit earlier, but I'm now seeing that, sales teams are buying in, there's now budget available, and people are ready to take this leap, right? People are ready to now have the right presence online and the right content to share. If I could say that there's one trend that I'm seeing, is I'm not a huge fan of everything being automated lately. I did a little bit of a test a while back, and what I did is I added a symbol to my Twitter username, just Julio Viskovich, not my handle, just my name. And what I was testing with that was how many people are going to be sending me these automated messages, direct messages, or online messages to, via message or a mention. And what I found was crazy. People aren't even actively doing this. It's not even human beings. People are sending me DMs, messaging me, adding me to lists. It's not authentic. And the minute I saw that, I mean, what does that, say? And I'm getting the same messages from so many people too, because probably the same tools are in play here. I'm not sure. But this automation is ruining my human-to-human experience that I'm looking for being online. And if I could say what's a trend I'm seeing that I don't like, it's that move to try to automate a human conversation, because that's impossible to do. And if you're doing that, you're not doing it the right way and engaging and actually adding the right context to your message for that person, you're going to be found out. That's not true social selling to me.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I want to just add, and the biggest piece is I want to add that it's also brand damaging for you and the system. That you actually can start deteriorating your brand by, wow, they're generating noise over there, and block them. And it's just like, TiVo them, switch the channel. And I think it's so attractive. Being sold will automate it for you, and companies get so seduced into it. But as far as I can see, it goes from not working to brand damaging or reputation damaging, and I think that's key. I mean, I have someone that will help me with social media, but I know what's going on. I'm the author of the content, and they're helping distribute it. And we have a quick escalation process of engagement that where I get contacted. You need to step in here, so it's an amplification of what I'm doing with intentionality, not a pray and spray, as someone else said earlier. And I saw your comment, Jill, as well.
Yeah, so I just want to quickly point out that Martin does have his other business, and that's what he's referring to, because nothing we do in linking into sales is automated because we can't afford to do it.
No, that's right. Right. We have our own. Absolutely. Thank you. But not only that, we built it from the ground up as a personal relationship, Greg. We'd rather move slower in building our business. We've been going 5 years. We'd rather go slow than race to the top and not build trust slowly over time. So I do want to say that's one of our values.
Well, I think that what you have your VA doing for you is very good work, because first of all, you need it, because sometimes you're just busy because you're driving all over the place and you need somebody to help come in and help you out. So and then with regards to what we're doing with linking to sales, if we can't keep it as authentic as possible, by getting out there and trying out the tools and learning more about them and having those one-to-one conversations, then it's just not going to be effective for us. That's why when you look at our Twitter accounts, we don't have 6 or 7 digit followers, or definitely not 7-digit followers, and we'd be like Brittany. But we don't have those kind of counts, because I personally like to have the one-to-one as well. So it's helpful to get to know somebody who has just followed you on Twitter, or even just connected with you on LinkedIn, just kind of find out what they're about, and how you can possibly help them, or how they could potentially help you as well. So, but I think that, when we look at tools like whether it's rfactr or other social media management tools, are they just automated enough so that way they can help salespeople do some of the automation stuff, but then be able to take and pick the ball up and run with it when it's time for them, when it's appropriate to. And I think based on what I had seen, at least from rfactr, is one of the few tools that actually helps salespeople do that.
Yeah, that was the key, and that was what happened, right? If you're going to share messages and give content to salespeople to share, that's fine and dandy, but that's where it stops in that situation, right? You can't now expect them to now pull more time out of their sales activities and go in and check Twitter and check LinkedIn and check Facebook, right? So one of the things that we wanted to do, Greg, that you so astutely brought up just now is that we provide an area in our tool so that all social media engagements for that individual get aggregated to one spot. So somebody who doesn't have to log into a bunch of different social channels. They can come to one spot and say, oh, wow, I have to get back to this person. I have to get back to this person, and exit out just like an email. So making sure that salespeople, especially people who don't have experience in social, have an easy, familiar way to adopt it and not just get thrown into some dashboard or tool that looks like, it's from 2050 or something.
All right. So what other, have we got any questions from the audience? Let's see. We have,
let's see if we have any others, and then we'll.
Yeah. I don't.
We've got Mike. Mike has, he was making a statement. Mike R out there. Let me just add, take live stream, for example. Your streaming time just went into overdrive, and it could quickly get your schedule out of whack.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is true.
Yep. The live definitely, but I do want to add, I think the live streaming is coming on in the social space because the bandwidth's available. I mean, Mike, who's a very good, he has a lot of video skills and many others, but this was available. He'd probably tell you this was available 10 years ago, if not more. It's just, we don't have the technology where all of us can do it now quickly. So that's, to me, why products like this are opening up. And I want to ask you one question. What do you think's going on with the future of Twitter? Just as a slight off topic, but, Google is working together. LinkedIn still lets you send out, and thank goodness they stopped the spamming in feature years ago. But what do you think the future is? Many people are asking me that. I see some exciting things coming up with it, but what's your view?
With Twitter, it's interesting, and they do have to develop over time, because when you think about it, it's a text focused, going back to the foundation, 140 characters text. And then times changed, and people started to value images more. People started to value video more as their, preferred ingested content. So that's where Twitter's going. And we see it right now with Blab IM. We saw things like Meerkat come out. So clearly Twitter is putting a lot of value in video, and they're going to continue to develop that because that is the preferred method of communication. And it's what makes the biggest impact. So I think they're going to continue to develop that. And I think they're going to continue to develop ways that you can make Twitter more engaging. So recently they added the ability to tag people in posts. So now that's notifying people. They're finding a way to make noise and make actionable items bubble up from Twitter, which right now has turned into sort of this feed that just keeps going of information that 90% of it's useless. And how do you find your way through that? And I think Twitter's figuring out a way to make it a more useful community by adding things like this, like video, and also by adding extra elements in it to make content more specific for people, like tagging people in posts. So increasing engagement, increasing time on site, and the stickiness of coming on to Twitter, they're looking to build on that. So that's what I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. I like, it looks like they're attempting to filter to decide what is quality content in a conversation. And I think if they can spend money on the best AI in that area to discern what in this context would be relevant. And of course, I'm an independent, so I've been having fun watching the debates, and we won't get more political than that. But Twitter's a great place to see, what's the top, what's the current, and what are the pictures and so forth. And I years ago I used to teach it in the social media as the doorway to the media, because we have the sub media, which to me is our podcast, and then the major media. And great, I've always enjoyed it. I've been an adopter, I think, for quite a while, but just wanted to get your idea on it, because it is clearly a strong and relevant participant in the social selling system. It's a public place. It's a safe place, just like LinkedIn. We go over to Facebook, now we're invading people's privacy. You need to slow down a little, unless it's a business page. Blogs are still relevant. YouTube is still relevant. And of course, Facebook is now trying to get its own work features come in. So we'll see where that goes with it. But just curious if you had any other comments on what, the technology you see around the corner and where it's going. And then, Greg, we'll probably have to wrap it up soon. Maybe we can get one or two more questions in.
Yeah. I'm trying to get this image here from Twitter. I'm going to have to go run through here real quick on how to do this. But we have one of our esteemed colleagues who's Holly, who is the director here at NC State at the Technology Training Solutions. She's out west right now, conducting or taking part in training with with a colleague of ours. And I wanted to actually include that picture, but unfortunately, I haven't figured out how to drop the picture from Twitter in here. So we'll try that out next time.
Yeah,
but the status update is there. So if anyone wants to check it out, there's a class that is actually learning about social selling over there on the West Coast.
Yeah, it's excellent.
And we'll kind of leave it at that.
Giving some big highs to them. Yeah, and good news.
Yes, very good. No, Julia, I really appreciate it. I thought this was a great discussion here. I was just checking to see if we had any additional questions. I think the only one that kind of came up was Brian had asked if you guys are public on what it costs to use rfactr. Even if you don't have specific, like, it's $20 a month per salesperson. Is there like a ballpark that you're allowed to share?
No, I mean, it's a range for sure. I mean, it can go from anywhere from, what you mentioned up to, wherever you want to take it. So I would suggest reaching out to me over at LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/social selling. That's my URL. Ping me over there and we can chat and set up a call.
Cool.
Excellent. And Greg, there was a question, I think, about our training as well. So I said, stay tuned, watch what's happening. It
is coming out soon. I replied back to Brian, and I mentioned that, we own socialselling.training. And so that's if you haven't heard of all these new top level domains that are coming out, .training is just another one, just like a .com. But we're going to be launching that in the next coming weeks. We just have to put some a little bit more work into the courses, make sure we're delivering an awesome experience. But our first course that's going to be available is going to be...
make it a surprise. Make it a surprise, Greg.
Fine, thanks. All right. Well, then...
Yeah, they'll have to pay attention to find out.
If you want to find out, tweet me, just don't tweet Martin, and I'll tell you.
We're going to have a good time. Yes, and we also want to mention Elise is joining our team, so we're excited about it. Yep. She's not here today. We knew we were trying new technology, so we thought we'd just take two people that could bomb on the air and not bring a third person in.
Right.
But look out for her. She's joining us to be on the show. Great energy, real passion for sales. So we'll put a shout out for her for this show.
Very good. All right. Yeah. So we'll look at her. Julio, thank you very much. I know we're going to be staying in touch here quite a bit. And I appreciate Kevin's side comments over there in the sidebar. He's always
Martin, great. Thanks for having me, guys.
And thanks for all the listeners, all the observers for our first Linking into Sales live show here on Blab. And this is Martin Brossman.
And I'm Greg Heyer. And you've been participating with us on the Blab for Linking into Sales. You'll have a great day.
Excellent.